Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. We have a fantastic episode coming up for you tonight. Terje Simonsen is coming up with us right next. Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, Victoria Monday. And down in the chat room, Alina moderating the chat. We have a fantastic episode for you tonight. Terje Simonsen, all the way from Norway, is with us. He has a fantastic book that's out in multiple languages, a short history of nearly everything paranormal that we're going to be diving deep into this evening. A little bit of background. Terje is a Norwegian historian of ideas, is a nonfiction author specializing in the esoteric and occult. He's educated at the University of Oslo. He also has taught introductory courses on philosophical and literary works, and we have his fantastic mind with us tonight. Terje, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have not yet dug into this book yet. Victoria actually has a copy in front of her, which is fantastic. But I have watched some interviews with you, and your work sounds absolutely fascinating. This isn't, you're talking about everything paranormal, but not necessarily ghosts and hauntings and things like that. You're more about telepathy, clairvoyance, the consciousness, and you talk about this mental internet that we can all tap into, which to me sounds very Jungian, like collective unconscious. So can we talk a little bit about the basis of your research for this fantastic book?
Yeah, it was a personal interest that I had for many years, and people I was in part of a Christian youth club, and some of my friends that I have now no doubt to disbelieve. They told me about strange things happening to them from time to time, and also some people in my family, well-educated folks. They told me about strange stories about telepathy and clairvoyant episodes and so. So I had to somehow dig into that, and I, of course, met my gypsy these fortune tellers and asked them questions, and also got a mentor at the university who is Norway's foremost expert on occult and esoteric traditions, Professor Jan Erik Ebstad Hansen. He is a literature list with more than 100 publications about these themes, and he guided me into the mysteries of anthroposophy and these kind of things. And on my own, later I studied parapsychology, the science, rigorous science about these phenomena. And long story short, a friend of mine, he's an experienced psychotherapist, and he wanted me to write a book about this. He says you must collect what you have, learned from these different forays and make a book about it. And I said, why? Yes, it will be helpful for many people, he said, because in his therapy room, people were coming into and telling about, say, a telepathic episode. And then he, as a, normal psychologist, he could just say, oh, that was strange. But basically, he knew that there was something more going on in some of these cases, that there had been, in fact, real telepathy or real clairvoyance going on. So he suggested that I write this book to give people, constructive frame to understand and interpret these phenomena within. And also he has bought 3 copies of my book, and placed it on his wards so that the younger psychologists can read and somehow educate themselves in a bit more expanded view of consciousness. And then we can go into the mental internet, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to learn more about this mental internet and kind of where you came up with the idea. Like I said, to me, it sounds kind of like the collective unconscious. And watching some of your other interviews, kind of talked about it's not necessarily in us, but it's something that we can tap into. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yes, as I said in some other interviews, if you say that internet is inside your mobile phone, that's totally wrong, or inside your PC. But we tend to have a very limited view of consciousness. We say consciousness inside my head, or inside your head, or inside your head. Would it be possible for me to see you also on the screen? Otherwise, I feel I'm talking to myself. I'd rather would feel the dialogue.
Sure.
Yeah, that's much more easy for me. Thank you. So it struck me that somehow the internet is an excellent metaphor for this, because we exchange emails with our friends and family, and also it's so that would be kind of telepathy, and also the download information, that would be what a clairvoyant person does. So somehow it's a metaphor. But as you say, I read Jung when I was quite young, so that is a heavy influence. And also a very specific experience I had with an old traveler, that is not the same as gypsies, but they have some kind of inherent lifestyle traveling around, and they have a strong culture for fortune telling and that. And I was going to a date some years ago, and I asked him, how will that date work out? And he said, yes, she will like you quite a lot. And then he said, and I can tell you, this woman is 1 meter and 64 centimeters tall. And I said, huh? How do you know? Oh, no, I don't know that, but I know. And I went to this date, and during the evening, which went quite well, and we had a nice chat. And so I asked, I couldn't, of course, let this just pass. And I said, by the way, how tall are you? And then she said, 1 meter and 64 centimeters. And I was struck, yeah. So first thing next morning, I hung up. How did you know this? And he laughed and said, it's kind of like when you do a search on the internet, because you have, say, Google or Bing or whichever search engine, and you have this search word, and then suddenly information related to that search word will appear. And it can be quite well sorted, but also quite chaotic. That depends. And he said, when you ask my question, it works a bit like that, because then I suddenly get my mind filled with information which somehow is related to what you have asked me. And he said also, I cannot decide exactly which information is to arrive. I have to be open to take what comes. And I was quite intrigued by that. And I said, okay, so you're somehow reading my mind then. And this was several years before I wrote this book. So I was very much in a learning phase of these phenomena then. And he said, yes, if you, especially if you're a good channeler. And I didn't know what he meant by that. But, I said, okay, but can we try that? He was then on holiday at the Canary Islands out in the Atlantic Sea. And I imagined, I said, no, I will make an inner picture of my house, which is a white house with a big blue double door in the middle. So that's quite distinct. White house with a big, starkly blue door in the middle. And I said, no, I will imagine my house, and please tell me, what do you see? And I imagined, and it was a couple of seconds pause. And then he said, I see something white, and I see something blue, So he took that like that, and he didn't have the time, to make a Google Maps search for where I was living or everything like that. No, so those episodes, that was kind of demonstration of how this mental internet really is working out. Because the Jungian stuff, which I admire Jung greatly, that is kind of very arcane, the collective unconsciousness of what happened 1,000 years ago is still with us and so on. But it's not up to date, the functional thing we do day to day as we experience the internet. But really, if you tune into this, and I've interviewed so many clairvoyants, people living from there, I know quite a lot of what they can do and what they cannot do. And for those who are clever with this, it's working like the internet. It's lightning fast, and if they have a good day, it can be very precise also.
Well, let me ask you this. We hear stories, and we've seen it throughout history, in which all of a sudden several people will have an idea for maybe it's an invention, or maybe it's a topic that they're researching. All of a sudden, there's like a slew of books out on the same topic, or everybody inventing the radio at the same time, or
Exactly.
Is that what they're tapping into here when these sorts of things happen?
I'm quite open to that. Could be a part of the workings of the mental internet as well. Yeah, as you said, the radio, Marconi and Bell, quite simultaneously. Also, integral mathematics with Newton and Leibniz at the same time, and they, for years struggle. I was first. No, I was first, and I was first, and I was first. So,
Right.
and they could in fact both be right. My personal favorite is Newton there, but that is another chapter. I think I think you're really onto something there, because the information, it's just like I upload information, say on my Facebook page, and other people can go there and he's in say in England, no, he's in Wales, okay, it's like that, the information is shared via this mental internet and becomes available to other persons also. And of course, if you have an extremely intense focus, that will be to have a very good search engine. And of course, these say Marconi and Bell and Leibniz and Newton, they were extremely focused for a long period of time, and then somehow it's like fine-tuning your what is called the binoculars, and there it is, So I think that's part of it. Of course, difficult to somehow finally prove, but as you say, it happens quite often through history. So that is a good working hypothesis, taken together with all the other manifestations of this mental internet. That's I write about in my 500 pages book.
There's a few pages there.
It is, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question since we're on this topic. As I was reading your wonderful book, I love your book, by the way. It's awesome. It's never mind. It's good. It's really good. I like it. But you were talking about how you were interested in magical phenomena when you were a child.
Yes.
And you and I are roughly the same age. And when I was a child, all of a sudden, boom, everybody was interested in psychometry and telekinetic abilities and precognitive stuff. But our parents were not. They were like, what are you talking about? I don't even know where these ideas came from. It's just boom. Everybody my age was suddenly interested in that. Could that be part of the tapping into the so-called internet?
That could it also, but of course the media we had in Norway at that time, and I suppose you had also, in England, I think. Oh, no, that was an American show, The Twilight Zone, wasn't that kind? Yeah. And also we had parallel shows in Norway. So I think it could be kind of what they in German called the zeitgeist. I don't think it necessarily would have be, say, a direct download from that. It could be more of the cultural field moving in that direction. Also, I remember, that is what I think. So even if I'm open to what you say, I will not somehow ascribe everything that happens. Because we had a quite influential TV host in Norway, and he was hosting an extremely good and well-informed series on 10 programs on the paranormal. Interviewing famous mediums and also parapsychologists in laboratories, and all of Norway saw that. And also, and also, if you say we are same age, there was the 70s, also Uri Geller went to meteoric fame, and he was also on the telly and in the newspapers all the time, doing his spoon-bending things, and also some mind-reading stuff. So it could be more of the cultural field and the zeitgeist, but of course, one thing does not exclude the other.
That's true. Can you explain brain urine? Is that part of this?
Well, that was a metaphor. As I said, people, conventional psychology tend to have a very reduced view of what consciousness is. They would say that consciousness is just a result of the chemistry in the brain. And that was, say, a rather poignant say statement made by a German zoologist called Karl Vogt in the mid about 1850 or so, and he said that the brain produces thoughts like the kidneys produce urine. So you know, and that is somehow not the cosmic dimension. You know, it's not the anima mundi, the world spirit. It's not the Brahman. It's not the thoughts of God. So it's making it very trivial. So I use that as a kind of metaphor for the reductionist view of consciousness that has been, say, the common stock among conventional psychologists until quite recently. So we are moving into better terrains, I think, because many both say physicists, quantum physicists, and also quite a lot of psychologists are open to those new perspectives. If I may quote, there is the most prestigious psychological journal in the world is likely the American Psychologist, which is released by the APA, American Psychological Association. And in 2018, in the May issue, they had an article. It's called "The Experimental Evidence for Parapsychological Phenomena," as to say, a May issue 2018. And there's a professor in psychology, Etzel Cardenia, and he argues wonderfully for that these phenomena are very real. It's just we have not yet reached, say, satisfactory explanatory model for them. So, and that the most prestigious psychological journal in the world takes in that kind of article, that speaks volumes.
It does. It really does.
Yes.
It does, but what kind of level do we need to get to that would be considered acceptable? Because we've seen, like here in the United States, the U.S. military using these type of abilities, like Project Stargate with remote viewing. So to me, that's an acknowledgement that that these abilities are real. So what is a level that we have to get to for this to be more widely accepted by
very interesting. I think my as I said, my mentor in the more say academic field than Professor Jan Erik Ebbestad Hansen, he told me in some episodes, I can give you that episode also because it was quite funny. He was in a casino in I think it was either Monte Carlo or Monaco. I always mix those places, but they have casinos both places, and the roulette, and he was there together with his wife, and she's the director for a big publishing company in Norway and very rational person. But they went over to the roulette, and she suddenly said, "Jan Erik, place on red number 3." And okay, and he placed the coin, or what is called the chip on number 3. I don't remember if it was 3, but the number she said. And because there are 36 numbers and a 0, there would be 1 out of 37 chance to get that right. And they started the spin, and it was a hit, correct. And as I said, 1 to 37, quite impressive, but still not impossible. And then there was the next spin, and she said, "Jan Erik, put on this one." I think it was black 15. And then he put on that, and after the spin, it was a hit again. And then you have 37 times 37, and that would be about 1 to 1,000 and so. And then there was to spin for the third time, and she said, "Jan Erik, put on that one." And he said, no, it won't work the third time. But it did, in fact. But he had not then put the. But during that period, they have, get 1,000 times back the money they had put on that, And he told me that episode, and he said it's very interesting observation. But until you have a good explanatory model to somehow catch those and make it into a unified, say, intelligible whole. There will just be curious and interesting and fascinating and exciting episode. So back to your question again, you have to get a good explanatory model for those phenomena. Until then, I think will just be, say, rumors and what is called hearsay and all that kind of things, until people, and therefore I tried in my simple way to launch what I felt would be a good model for our times, the mental internet, because then people can, it's like working like that, therefore I suddenly knew my cousin had broke up with her boyfriend. I just felt it, because my antenna had somehow crossed her Facebook page, the mental Facebook page. Then, so it's a very simple model, but it will be up to the really bright physicist, quantum guys, and all that kind of to make this with all the theoretical framework. But as a working model for everyday life, I think it's quite good.
Yeah, one of the terms you used in your book that I really liked, that I've had a couple of these moments, you called them 8 martini moments. Mine have been like 7.5 maybe, but
Okay.
but it's a perfect metaphor for
that's a military expressions, because
Mike.
as Mike said here, the U.S. military for 20 years, in fact, have a big project called Stargate, where they try to train clairvoyance spies, and those involved in the project all say that these things are real. The public evaluation, they were a bit doubtful about the military usefulness of the project. They were not discussing the say phenomena per se, so they felt it was a bit too uncertain because if you have to base maneuvers and lots of people's lives are in the balance, then you cannot, you must be certain, you cannot just have this kind of I feel this or I feel that. But all involved, both the agents and the physicists and the officers were quite convinced that these phenomena are very real. But the 8 martini expression, that was when they had a kind of paranormal experience that was so astonishing that they had to have 8 martinis to regain their composure.
That's the perfect description for it. I mean,
okay, thank you.
It's wonderful.
But it's
so I just want to let everybody know that you can find the link to the book, and I'll go ahead and put the image of the book back on the screen here for a moment. You can find a link to the book in the description for those watching on YouTube. And for those listening to the podcast later and on KGRA radio, they can find this at Amazon, correct?
Yes, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Powell's or so, but Amazon is most simple, I would guess, and also there are there's a good say presentation and also quite a lot of the endorsements by quite competent people, so that could also somehow encourage people to have a closer look at the book.
And you also have an audio short history. I'm sorry, you have the audio version.
Yeah, the audio version later.
Yes, the audio
and you have the audiobook coming out.
The audiobook is also on Amazon, and also the Kindle version is there. So for people traveling a lot or having to work from a home office, having it in the background and so all the versions are available at Amazon.
All right, and that is A Short History of Nearly Everything Paranormal. Okay, I do want to get a couple questions here from the chat in real quick, and I know Victoria has a bunch more questions, but from Judy Wilson, do you believe that everyone can tap into telepathy?
Yes, I believe that, but I compare it to musical abilities, because everybody can sing for their own pleasure in the bathroom, but not everybody can become Beethoven or Jimi Hendrix. So I think I think it's an ability that somehow, because it's not linked to the ego, it is as long as you can think, you are able to both send and receive telepathic, impressions and information, because it's linked to, as I said, the mental internet. It's the consciousness itself that is non-local in nature, and therefore, as when you are thinking, you are online, and then you are already connected with all other people thinking, which basically will mean everybody in the world, and even I think also animals, because the consciousness is a cosmic, non-local thing. It's not just urine of the brain that I have inside my head. So again, the model of consciousness, because I remember first speaking to a psychic person on the phone, and I thought, okay, if we were in the same room, she would probably able to read me, you know, my body language, tone of voice, you know, the glance and everything. But how is it possible that she is sitting in another town and so on and so on? So I just, can that be real? And so, but it many times and from different angles, I ended up, if you have this other model of non-local mind, as I said, the mental internet, then of course, this is exactly what we should expect. And you don't usually receive emails from the president or so on. You receive emails from your family and friends. And that is also telepathic messages. This mental internet is vast, but you don't get everything into your, say, inbox. Luckily,
Right.
but yes. So as I said, if you have the model of consciousness that is not local and inside your head, then you somehow see that everybody can, in fact, receive and send telepathic messages.
Okay, we have one here from our chat moderator, Alina. She asks, is being able to feel people's energy and vibration a kind of telepathy in a way, or is that only clairvoyance?
Very good question. I think it could be both. I do a kind of have a little segment in my book where I discuss the difference between telepathy and clairvoyance, and they somehow overlap. But what they say, if you have telepathy, then it's more, if you go back to the military, then if you wanted to use telepathy to find about, these were back in the days of the Cold War, to find the plans of the Russian, then you would somehow tune in to a specific Russian important general and try to read his mind. That would be telepathy. But if you are, for instance, using clairvoyance, you would say, direct your attention towards a military site and to try to see if they were going on operations and moving on troops and that kind of things. So the one would be, say, direct mind to mind, like trying to, say, go to the Facebook page of a specific person, or the clairvoyant would just be to go to Google and make a general search, you know. So one would be specifically directed to the individual consciousness of another person, and other would be more to, as I said, general search on the net. But these things overlap. So I will not, but listen, say, as a working distinction between the two phenomena, that would be, say, I think a fruitful way to think about them. But it's a good question, and it's difficult to answer more precise.
Sure. And one more here, and then I'll hand it back off to Victoria. So this is from Sarah Youssef. Does Terje believe that certain psychic phenomena is dependent on level or type of awakening? Are there degrees of complexity within each discipline, such as empathy and psychometry?
Yes, I'll just have to read the question. So I'm answering
there's
the
a
question.
little bit here.
Yes, certainly dependent levels. Yes, but somehow you can also feel people on a rather, say, general psychic say psychic phenomena and ethics is not the same, and that can be quite disappointing, because I will give an example from Sweden. Some years ago, there were two women, a mother and daughter. They are quite psychic, both of them. I spoke with the mother, but they were using their psychic abilities to pressure a banker for money, you know, and they were charged by the police. Yeah, because they could tell so much about him, and he was probably in a life crisis or something, you know. So what kind of level of awakening is this? They were apparently quite psychic. That is also my experience with the mother. You know, I was quite impressed by her, but her ethics was not on a very awakened level. So it's a kind of confusing that. But again, I think basically the phenomena are quite neutral. You can be a scumbag and still be quite psychic. But so it's more like how do you use this? If you use them for guidance, if you use them for healing and all that kind of things. So and also if compared to music, of course there must be some talent if you are going to become a good rock musician. But if you use that just to do drugs and exploit roadies and fans and all that in economical and sexual and every way, then it's not on level with your musical talent. So you have to somehow divide ethics from the psychic phenomena, and that can be confusing because many spiritual masters have quite developed skills in psychic phenomena. So we tend to somehow connect these things, but it can be, as I said, confusing and a bit disappointing to see that is not always the case. That said, if you do meditation, for instance, seriously for many years, the chances are you will develop both personally and say with psychic phenomena. So they can go hand in hand, but does not always do that. Is that a kind of answer?
Your volume got a bit. That's a great answer. Thank you. Your volume got a bit lower when you knocked your microphone.
Like is better now?
There we go. That's better. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Victoria.
Oh, that was deep. So no psychic shakedowns. Okay. Okay. Use psychic abilities for good. Okay. In your book, you were talking about, there's so many different things. Kant and the Copernican revolution. And that was just a mind blowing where you said that space and time are not parts of this world, but they're in our consciousness and they are really tools of how we organize our reality. I mean, can you explain a little bit more about that?
That's a long yes. One of the most famous and influential philosophers in, say, modern times and the times of the Enlightenment was the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, and he found that there's a long background there with his dispute with another English philosopher called Hume. So I will not go into detail about that because that's a bit But as you said, he found that. I have never found a good English word there, but in Norwegian and German, the anskuelsesformer, anschauungsform, that there are ways to see the world, that space and time is part of, our consciousness makes a matrix for us to live in. It organizes our world. And if you are, for instance, to tell if you met a friend, for instance, if you are to make sense of that experience to another person, you must tell this other person the space, where do you met, and the time. When did you meet that person? Otherwise, if you can't tell where you met them or when you met him or her, then it's difficult to pinpoint. Or did it happen at all? So space and time is somehow the matrix which organizes our world. And what is Kant's Copernican revolution is that he says these things are somehow made by a very deep layer in our consciousness. They are not, time is not a substance that is existing apart from our consciousness. And time, neither space or time are substances in themselves. They are somehow, as I said, this matrix. And also with the people liking the sci-fi movie, The Matrix, they will also, yes, and it's Uno, isn't it? That's his name. Transcending that. So that is what I think. Also, I discussed in that in my book, because Kant says that in some cases there seems to be see the possibility to transcend that matrix, and then you have if you transcend, for instance, space, then you have clairvoyance and telepathy, because I can tune into my friend in Australia, and also if I transcend time, then I could perhaps say what will happen about this meeting I have with my boss tomorrow, or that kind of things. So I said normally we are regulated by that matrix, but if we change the gears of consciousness, Kant, he does not say proclaim, but he hints at the possibility after a very famous psychic episode with a Swedish scientist. I go into depth in that book, but he had some kind of say good testimonies about these kind of things, and somehow made a philosophical explanation. This part of Kant is not very well known in academia, and also in his books he is a bit, say, careful to become too obscurantist and too occult. But in his letters and also in some of his lectures, he talks much more freely about this phenomena. Very interesting. I always loved Kant, you know. But to see it, that he has his occult side was quite exciting for me.
Yes, leave nothing in writing, just suggest it.
I suggest, yes.
Yeah, but if the consciousness is immortal, that means it would transcend time. Does that mean that there's only a finite number of consciousness, like, or souls, or?
You know, basically, that's of course a very profound question. But if you go back to the Indian Vedanta philosophy, that somehow is the root of everything spiritual, and also in European tradition, because there is the caravans. You know, they exchange not just spices and silk and camels. They exchange lots of information and philosophy. Right. And the Indian Vedanta philosophy is very, very old, and they say, basically, deep down, there's only one consciousness. It's like there's a crystal that with lots of facets, and this facet is blue, and this is red, and this is yellow, and this is clear as water. But basically, it's just one consciousness. So I am one facet of the concept of consciousness. You would be another facet of the consciousness. Mike would be a third facet. Our listeners would be thousands, millions facets of the cosmic consciousness. That would be the Vedanta take on it. And I feel that is an alluring and intriguing view, because somehow deep down, don't we feel there is a unity to everything?
Yeah, somehow
I do.
Yeah, we're connected somehow.
Yes. Yeah. And that base level of consciousness, that I think is that is not me, ego, Terje, individual, which is developing through my life, and perhaps even through several lives, or Mike, individual. That is it's transcending our individual egos. This base level of consciousness.
Interesting. I have you brought Uri Geller up earlier.
Yes.
So I have questions about him. Was he for real, or did he have something on his hands to?
He's still around.
Yes, he is. In my book, yes, he is, and he's looking quite good also, because he gone into healthy food and trains every day. So for his age, he's looking excellent. I think he is both. That's my personal opinion, and that is based on because he has somehow admitted to doing tricks when he was a young guy and entertaining Israeli troops, and also he was there was a video on YouTube, you could see he was doing some bending of a spoon with his hands and not with his mind. On the other hand, a friend of mine, I will tell you that story, a friend of mine, docu-film creator, he's won a couple of prizes in the US, Terje G. He was meeting Geller for an interview, and his young son, I think he was 10 years old, had brought a teaspoon from the cupboard. And after Terje had made the interview with Geller, the little son said, Papa, can you give this to Mr. Geller? And Terje, okay. Yeah, and that was not a trick spoon, that was their own spoon from their own cupboard. And he gave that to Geller, and Geller stroked it, and gave it back to the son. And then when the son stood with the spoon in his hands, then it started bending. So that's quite impressive. So it seems he has some, and what somehow could say be an argument for me that also that Geller is not the only one having these abilities. If he was the only one in the world, but a quite famous British healer called Matthew Manning, he is about the same age as, and he was become first known as the poltergeist boy, because very what is called heavy phenomena happening around him. This started when he was 11 years old, and a big cupboard coming against him. And he was also living at what is a boarding school at that time, and there were 25 boys living in the same dormitory. Yes.
Yeah, dormitory. Yep.
25 boys, and in the middle of the night, the beds started moving, and this was like in a horror movie, and burning circles on the walls, and small knives swishing through the air, and Geller, that was about the same time as Geller, and Manning tried himself. He was seeing Geller doing this and on TV, and Manning also wanted to try this, and he also started to do stroking a spoon, and it bended, And Manning's father is a quite famous architect. He is a no nonsense guy, so he didn't like that. So he found a kind of what is called a very thick iron rod, and he went over to his son, no, bend this. And Manning worked on it and worked on it and worked in 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it started bending. So after Manning, he has been very thoroughly researched by scientists. Professor George Owen, who was a fellow at Toronto University in Canada, and also Cambridge University, very good universities, both of them. He have never taken, say, Manning into cheating. Never discovered any kind of cheating. He studied him for 2 years, and so since Manning could do these things, why not Geller? But also Geller I find him is a charming guy, and I like him. But he is, he wants to put on a good show, and if if you sign up, for instance, with a program host 2 years ahead, and then you have slept bad and you are on air, what do you do if the abilities don't work that night? Of course, you pull a trick, And
Right.
yes, yeah. And Geller was touring the world, and had shows more or less every night. So of course, what also the military would tell you, that these phenomena are real, but they are also a bit, what you can say, unreliable. So you cannot disappoint the audience. The show must go on. And I think my personal view is that Geller has real abilities, but it also cheats when it's needed. That's my personal view. Yeah.
I have a personal friend who can do that. He'll put a spoon in your hand, and he won't tell me how he does it.
Okay.
So maybe there's like another law of physics we just don't know about, or something.
Well, as I said, these also physicists have gone into this phenomena, and some, for instance, the famous David Bohm. He was working together with Einstein when he was young, and also Brian Josephson, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1973, professor in Cambridge. And I think they have not said that this Geller is the real thing, because I will not, as you said, there could be, and also my favorite in this department is Manning, really, because I've been to a couple of seminars with him and asked him questions, and I think he is real, so I like to have people have not been caught in cheating,
Right.
but you have quite good physicists. There was also John Hampstead. He was the chief of research at King's College in London, I think, and he made a book called The Metal Benders, and he also took lots of children into the laboratory, because if you have gurus and magicians, they can be wolves in sheep's vestments. So yes, so he took children into a laboratory because they are not that likely to be successful cheaters, at least, and he got exceptional results. Also, some of the spoons were into glass bottles, and even the glass bottles were somehow what is called melted around. It was not just a normal cap, but it is melted into this. And still, when the children are holding around the bottle, the metal bent within. So, and he was, as I said, the research chief of research at I think it was King's College in London, Birkbeck College. Okay, his name is John Hested, and the book is called The Metal Benders, so people can read and make up their own opinion.
I'm going to look for that one.
Well, let me ask you this, because we've been talking about, physicists, we've been talking about, some of these famous people like Geller and Manning. But what about, the indigenous peoples of the world? Like, you have your Native Americans here in the States, or the Aboriginals in Australia, and they seem to, we inherently credit them with being more in tune to nature, more in tune to these abilities. Is that because they're more superstitious in nature, or do they really have a more inherent connection to clairvoyance and telepathy and these types of abilities?
Yeah, very good question. I answer well. The suggestion from one Australian anthropologist was that, because also the Aboriginals in the Australian culture have a very strong tradition for psychic phenomena, and he felt that it could be the very tranquil lifestyle they had, that were not lots of cars honking and TV sets all over the place, and also in Norway we have the Sami tradition, and if you are out on the tundra with the snow and just it's the moon and it's just you and the reindeer, of course you are much more likely to pick up say mental things of every kind. So I think it's the traditional lifestyle. Of course, many have moved into towns now, and so probably have lost. But so on. And also, other thing is the culture for it. Because if you're trained from your child to just dismiss this kind of haunches, of course you will be likely to overlook what then appear. But if your grandmother, for instance, I was talking to a guy from Jamaica, and he was taught by his grandmother, because they had when they were in the kitchen, they did not speak. They just communicated telepathically, So she trained him to, yes, he is living by his abilities today, and you can consult him if you like, call him and ask him. So they have, say, cultures somehow, what is called collecting and interpreting and helping to honor these abilities. So both the lifestyle and the culture around them is my say take on this, because I think the phenomena themselves are part of human genetics. Of course, as some family have more musicality, there will probably also, for instance, the gypsies, they might have some genetics that somehow predispose them towards it. But basically, I think, as I said, is lifestyle and also the culture around the phenomena.
So you think some of these traits are genetically handed down through our DNA?
Well, again, I was discussing with Dean Radin we had a little Zoom event before Christmas, and as many probably know, Dean Radin is the world's most famous parapsychologist today, and he thinks it's genetically related. And comparing again to music, if you see Bach, for instance, the famous composer, I think it was 5 of his sons also become musicians and composers, and even their sons again become composers. So there is some genetical things going on there, like also mathematicians. I remember, this film, it's 20 years ago now, The Beautiful Mind, about John Nash. He was a mathematician, and his son also became a mathematician, So there again, you have both a genetical thing and also, of course, a milieu that will somehow be friendly towards exploring these phenomena. So genetics is a part of the bag here.
Yeah, in our groups, it's culturally accepted.
Yes.
And it's just something everyone does. And then, like in my family, it's like, "What are you, demon? What are you doing?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and also, if you're into Jewish tradition, in the Jewish tradition from Eastern Europe, the Hasidic traditions, which is kind of a manifestation of the Lurianic Kabbalah, and there's a long and exciting tradition. There they have a very vibrant say culture among these phenomena. There's a wonder rebbe, the wonder-making rebbes. So there's lots of stories about them and how then they had cultivated the abilities to clairvoyance and healing, and so that is say more closer to Western. I have discussed with both the gypsies and also people with Sami background, and they have very open, say, relation hotline to these phenomena.
That would be nice. No.
Yes, but
Have
you
a
can
hotline.
establish yourself, and it's kind of when you start to observe these things and get some experience yourself, you will be much more likely to be aware when next time you get a hunch about something, and so it's you can somehow retrain yourself and make your own culture, and that as I always say when I discuss these things, I met with a guy once, and he was had been committed to a mental hospital because of schizophrenia, and he was also after my experience with him quite psychic, and he wanted to train to become more psychic, and I said, don't you think it's better just to get some grounding, dig in the garden, because he was already in the mental internet with more than half of his being, so the phenomena can be a very exciting part and extremely valuable, say, expansion of your own consciousness, but at the same time you have also to stay grounded, to the many people. I have discussed this with so many people. Many psychics are quite troubled until they learn how to get grounded and sort, because if for instance a psychic advisor I use when I have to get some perspective of what I do sometimes, she have difficulties going to the shop, because when she enters a queue she will start getting into the mental lives of the 5 people standing before her in the queue, and it is very confusing for her. Yes, so it's both a gift and a burden to deal with this phenomena.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show here, so I do want to get to a few more questions here from our viewers. So from the chat rooms, this one's actually from the Facebook one, not YouTube. And it's from Karen Whitaker. She asks, with our increase in media, satellites, etc., could the increase in information across airwaves cause an influx of information to our brains for this recognition of information of others? Like she gives an example here of she broke up with her boyfriend. But so I guess with all this technology that we have going on these days, would that cause some interference for us to access this mental internet?
Very interesting question. Jacques Vallée, he is an expert on UFOs and all that kind of stuff. He was also one of the founders of the internet. He has made some of the codes that still are there. He, before the internet as we know it today, there was this called ARPANET, which was a kind of 20 universities connecting their computers to increase computing powers, and they started to chat. They did not just do mathematical computations, but they also started to chat, and that is what we today have as email. And he told me, he has said, and you should always check out on the YouTube what Jacques Vallée says, because he is a genius, really. He has also started about 30 companies which are on the NASDAQ, so he's won prize for science fiction novels and so. But he said that was the experience of many of the early coders and programmers, that they somehow, with parallel with the activities on this newfound territory with the emailing, and so also having the mental part going on in parallel with this, that many experienced that without really perhaps knowing how to interpret that. So I guess there is some kind of exchange there, but it's quite difficult to be precise about these things. But I would say information is information, and if you are open to, say, information, and there is more information, then probably you have the possibility to somehow go in there and sort, and there will be more in store for you to find, I would guess. But exactly how you are to relate to that, I cannot. It's difficult to advise on. Yes.
Yeah, and this one's kind of on a related note, not necessarily technology blocking the way, but social constructs. This is from Sarah Youssef. How difficult is it to break mental constructs and enter the mental internet? Do you believe that the changes in social consciousness over time is easing the way?
Yes, I do, because you could see that early in European tradition, many of these phenomena were taken for granted, and sociologists of religions will tell you that more than half of grown-up people have experienced these things. But as I said, back to that, we have not had an explanatory model that somehow can catch these phenomena and make sense of them. But I think we are going to do that. Back to the article from 2018 in American Psychologist. That is a symptom of that there is a change on the horizon there, because I think somehow people have been very much in love with Newtonian physics, and that is very understandable because it's so clean, and it's so easy to relate to, and what you learn in high school, how to acceleration of a car and all that kind of things, and of course it's extremely valuable. But as Einstein told us, when we are not speaking about just the speed of a car, but speed of light, that's totally different set of laws coming into action, or at least an expansion of that. So and when more and people are, Einstein has become say what is called part of the social stock of knowledge, and also quantum physics is entering into that. The first serious what you can say assault on the modern worldview there, which went into the popular culture, was during say hippie time, with people taking psychedelics, and many had telepathic experiences, and also this book from the quantum physicist Fritjof Capra, trying to somehow combine quantum physics and Eastern mysticism. And now you say, I think it's mostly for good, done in a responsible way, but no, big universities as Yale and Harvard starting to take somehow say starting research on psychedelics again. I will not say, as I said, I think it's extremely important to always stay grounded. But a friend of mine, he had cured himself together with a psychologist. He's cured himself for alcoholism by the use of psychedelics. And also I know people with terminal cancer had been prepared in a very good way to dying using psychedelics. This is also part of psychedelics, is not the same as the paranormal, but both belong to the experience of an expanded consciousness. So it seems somehow we are taking the psychedelics out of the party culture and the subcultures and reintroducing them to serious consideration. What can they give us? I think, as I said, the article in American Psychologist for 2009 is a symptom of the same. So yes, I think we are going in towards a more inclusive model of consciousness that will somehow allow us to live with our telepathy and clairvoyance and all these things.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the psychedelics. It seems like ayahuasca is becoming increasingly popular these days.
Yes. Also a friend of mine, I can tell you, we are going close. A friend of mine here from a little town, he has went to Mexico 2 times to speak with a Maya shaman. And this shaman also was educated and a medical doctor in England. So he knew both the Western tradition and the Mayan tradition, And my friend went into the jungle with him, and he was sitting in there and was in a power spot, and the shaman left him in the jungle. He was sitting about 8 hours alone in the jungle, with the cacadus and everything around him. And also there was rumbling in the earth, so probably it was a volcano or something there. And he had eaten some of this, not ayahuasca then, I think they used the peyote cactus. That's kind of staple food for the shamans, and while he was sitting there, he was thinking to himself a conflict he had with his brother, for they had been not speaking properly for 10 years or so, and he was going deep into this conflict and thought to himself, oh, I have to be consoled with my brother. I have to put this behind me, and take up contact and make things good again, and so. And when the shaman came back to my friend, and they talked, and how are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing fine, and so. And the shaman looked at him and said, I see you have been making atonement with your brother. That's quite impressive.
That is pretty impressive.
And he was also a medical doctor, so he combined the traditions. So it's possible to expand our horizon to include both modern science, which is a wonderful thing, with the wisdom of old traditions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take
Which
one
I
last
try
question
to
here.
do in my book.
Which you do, yes, in the book. And we'll
Yes, it's all
we'll
in
put
the
it back
book,
up there
yes.
real quick. Short history of nearly everything paranormal. We are down to the last few minutes of the show. I do want to get one question here from Alina, and she was wondering why, if you understand why some people develop clairvoyance later in life.
That might be coincidental. And as I said, it can be a burden also. I spoke to so many psychics that having problem with say, navigating these abilities. But also, for instance, the guy I told you about early in the program, he who said the exact height of my date, 1 meter and 64 centimeters, he told me that he had, say, experienced these things when he was a young boy, 7 years old. He knew he had these abilities, but he didn't want to have anything to do with them. And he lived a normal life and married and so, but he become divorced and went into a life crisis, and suddenly these abilities appeared again, and then he included them in his life, and he, for the last 30 years or so, he has worked as a psychic advisor. So there might be stages in life where the old Indian is said that the first 20 years you should be a child, and then you should be married, and then you should do something else, and then the last 20 years you should become a spiritual teacher. So it might be that you are not say mature enough to navigate these in a constructive way in your life. So yeah,
Okay.
There might be reasons. Yes.
Victoria?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm agreeing.
Because we are getting down toward the end here.
No, awesome. Buy the book. No, I totally agree with you. My family on my father's side, it comes from the Roma Gypsy line, and we always joked, haha, but when I finally started researching and opening up to that, it's just like a whole new world opened up, and I'm only up to seven martinis. I'm waiting for my 8 martini moment. So
very interesting. Yes, very interesting. Very interesting. And also, I spoke with an American psychic. She had been a kind of party girl, and I don't think she was into the spiritual things at all. No, but then she was run over by a car, and she was clinically dead for 11 minutes or so. And when she came back to life, she was what's it called, resuscitated. It's called yes. I'm still learning English.
Perfect. Got it.
And when she came back to, say, regained consciousness after being clinically dead for 11 minutes, she found herself psychic. And it was extremely chaotic, because she could feel or know what the nurses were thinking, and meeting another person in the canteen at the hospital, what he was thinking, and so and what is my mental life, and what is his mental life, and what is her mental life. It was all just a mix, So she had to really learn to sort those things. And now she's working also as a psychic advisor full time. But it's, as I said, it's a challenge. It's like playing the violin. It sounds terrible the first 2 years, but then starting to get on, and you can give concerts and entertain, and yeah.
You're absolutely right. You have to learn how to ground, and then when you finally open, because I spend the weekends in the woods sometimes.
Yes, that's beautiful. Communicating with nature, the trees and the energies and the smells and everything. So that's very healthy. Yes,
I love the forest. But you're right. It opens you up once you accept, like, hey, maybe this is really the way I'm supposed to be going, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing in life, and stop fighting it.
Yeah. And always listen to that was I call the religious question, that what is meaningful for you? Is that relationship meaningful? Is that job meaningful? Is this activity meaningful? Is this lifestyle meaningful? Always try to sensitize yourself towards what is meaningful in your life, because that is the way. And also I think this psychic phenomena, if they are part of that, they will be a blessing for you. Otherwise they can be chaotic, but as long as you relate to the question of meaning, then these phenomena also will find a place, I think.
Yeah, I tried playing roulette. I put half on red and half on black, and it went to green. I totally lost.
Well,
That's a good metaphor. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
on that note, we are at the end of the show. Terje, where can everybody find this wonderful book, Short History of Nearly Everything Paranormal?
I would go to Amazon, either Amazon.com, or if you are in England, Amazon.co.uk. But Amazon.com, they will find everything, and also the audio book and the ebook with Kindle.
All right, fantastic. For those watching here on YouTube, that link is down in the description of the show for those listening to the podcast later or syndication on KGRA radio. Like the man said, go to Amazon. You can find it right there. So
2 days. You get 2 days.
Namaste.
you get it in 2 days, right? All right. Terje, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I know it's the middle of the night there in Norway, so we really, really do appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me. Very nice talking to you both.
So nice to
Absolutely.
meet you. I love your book. I'm going to keep saying that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening and take care.
I will. Bye.
Bye-bye.
It really is
All
wonderful.
right.
It really
Yeah. Yeah, that is it is a very impressive book. Short history of nearly everything paranormal. Definitely recommend everybody go out and grab that. I'm definitely going to jump on the audio book.
Yeah, I'm thinking
With
if
all
I
my
could,
traveling coming up soon, I'll definitely be listening to that.
I could sneak that in work. No one will know.
There you go. Yeah, just wear an earpiece and
Keep my head down.
all right. So let's go ahead and get to the shout outs. Do want to thank Alina for moderating the chat this evening and sending me all those questions. I know we couldn't get to every question that was put out there this evening, but we got to a fair share of those. Really do appreciate that. All right. So let me go to the participants tab here, those on, at least for YouTube. Adam Tillery's in the house. Thanks for joining us tonight, Adam. There's Betty Lange, grand old folks. Really appreciate that. Brenda Baum, thanks for joining us tonight. There's Jennifer Bloomer. Thank you very much. Sarah Youssef, thanks for your questions. TFT Tarot for today. And the Haglin, Helen Espinoza as well. I know Hunter Road Media's Fairy Queen Diane Hilbert was here up until just a moment ago. Stacy Comiskey's in the house. Thank you for joining us, Stacy. Christy Louvoire, thank you for joining us. Appreciate that. And let's see, scroll up through here. Mr. CO2 is in the house, as well as Christopher Stanton from Stanton's Journeys. And who else was here? EEQQ is in the house. Great to see you again, EEQQ. And I know there were quite a few people that were in here. Robert Hanna, the Auntie Coco, Jill Nimchinsky, Joe Diamond. Joe Diamond's our guest for next week. He was in he was in the chat. He said that he was about a third of the way through the book. So he's also reading this book. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And each chapter is like a page. It's on my level. I have time to read a page. But I'm still working on Little Women.
That makes it a much easier and quick read when it's formatted like that.
And you can jump around. It's not connected. Like, oh, okay, well, I'm interested in this now, so I'm going to go read this. So.
Great. Yeah. Great. So let's see. We also had Judy Wilson. Tammy Heitzman was in earlier. Said, Victoria, your hair looks awesome.
Oh, thank you. I did it myself.
Fantastic. All right, so that will do it for this evening. Like I said, Joe Diamond is in the house next week. He's going to be talking about mind reading. He's been on a number of shows. You look him up, and you'll see him on a bunch of different morning shows and talk shows and things like that. And he has some fascinating. I don't want to use the word tricks, but that's almost kind of what they come off like.
Talent.
What's that?
It's a talent.
He is a talent, yeah. But, yes. He'll just be talking, and like all of a sudden he'll come up with, like your first little, girlfriend or boyfriend that you kissed in school or whatever, and yeah, it's just funny stuff like that.
I have to put my shields up.
And there's Judy Wilson as well. So thank you, Judy. So what's that?
I have to put shields up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because he'll read that. So that'll be fun next week.
Not my cats.
All right. He'll read your cats for you.
No. Oh, geez, no.
So, all right. So that's next week's show, Joe Diamond. Tomorrow night, tune in to Beyond the Shadows. That's through the Connected Universe Portal site. So let me put that link up there real quick. ConnectedUniversePortal.com. You have to, of course, join us through the site to tune into the live stream show and watch ask questions and all that stuff. Of course, it'll be a podcast later, but to join us live is through ConnectedUniversePortal.com.
Topic?
All right, everybody. We'll get to the topic tomorrow when I post it.
Okay, fine.
So I was putting things together today, and I just got a little overwhelmed with everything else that's been going on because I just got back from Hinsdale House this past weekend, and just everything's kind of a blur over the past few days. So,
okay,
all right. So have a great night, everybody. Take care.
bye.